dealer's choice.
Hello and welcome to another Whiskey Review with me, the Whiskey Novice. Thank you for joining me once again. This is review number 139, and for now it's the final part of this series of Dealer's Choice. But as you know, I will be back. Oh yes, I will. And this one I have to thank a couple of my patrons chose this one. Those being Che Francis and Alan McLaughlin. So thank you, Che and Alan, for choosing Loch Lomond 12-year-old Inchmurrin. Or Inchmurrin 12-year-old, I suppose it'd be that way around. This one of Loch Lomond's sort of the 12-year-old range now, being the Inchmurrin, Inchmoan, the standard, the classic. And but these ones would be the ones that you would see. The other one tends to go to the indie bottlers. So this one, it states on it, fruity. And it is fruity. How do I go into this? So what I do? Well, what I do when it comes to Loch Lomond, any of those that know me by now, will know that I reach out to your friend of mine, Michael Henry, to ask what we need to know about this. And there's a reason why this is so fruity. Michael was telling me, his words not mine, that the spirit is collected at high strength, therefore capturing the fruity esters at the start of the spirit run. As I said, his words not mine, although I think we do understand that now. I think an awful lot of us, have been around whiskey long enough now to understand what that means. That if you're collecting the spirit at high strength, the fruity esters haven't got a chance to sort of. So that's my understanding. So this does make for a fruity whiskey. Bottled at 46%. This is matured first fill and first fill recharge American oak, I believe. Bottled at 46%. Non-chill filtered. There is colour added. Michael did tell me that. And fruity it is. Definitely fruity. But not only is it fruity, weirdly, the first thing I get, and I've never heard anybody else mention this, but the first thing it reminds me of is butterscotch, particularly like Werther's Originals or that along that line. If you don't know Werther's Originals, butterscotch. Werther's Originals are actually a German candy, but they're pretty regularly available here in the UK. And yeah, this butterscotch feel for me is the first thing that I get. It's a nice buttery, rich nose. It really is. And that richness, the butteriness, the sweetness, all settle down. And it starts to take a slightly... This is when the fruit then... You sort of start... For me, I put that butterscotch thing to the back of my head. And the fruit then becomes the thing. Yeah, it changes. It sort of changes back and forth for me because that butterscotch thing's still there. There's even a light vinegary hint of it. Or I'm going to suggest one to you here, and you might not get this, but I sort of get it if you let this sell. There's a smell of fish and chips when they come in wrapped in paper, and it's that. I love it. I love that smell, and I get it in this vaguely in the background, just vaguely. It's probably a very personal thing, but slight note of gingerbread, which I've started to find in some Loch Lomond Glen Scotias. Pear, or even pear drops, because there is a slight sharpness. It's bold, it is fruity. Yeah, it is bold and fruity. And I know I've said a few things there, and I keep saying fruity. Well, what sort of fruity? Well, I actually would say, look, treat this as a balanced sum of its parts rather than breaking it down into little bits, because it is a fruit burst of a whiskey, but there's an awful lot going on, and it just becomes like a fruit salad. I've used it before, where there's just an awful lot of fruit at play here. And I think it's whenever you get into the palate almost then that it starts to really, really blossom. So here we go. Sweet and sour. Arrival. With the onus on the sweet again. It's slightly sharp, but when I say sharp, it's more tangy probably than sharp. I'm getting toffee candy. More of that pear. There's cinnamon in the back. I get vanilla. Stewed apples. And actually, I said about cinnamon. I'm saying about stewed apples. I also get flaky pastry. This reminds me a little bit of strudel. It's got that, I said earlier on, this is one for the Germans, I said earlier on about where there's original. It's also got a hint of strudel about it. Maybe that's Austria actually. It is. It's a tester in a good way because there's an awful lot going on. An awful lot. Finish is quite strong, quite long, sorry. It's not hot. It's quite round. You know, I did my tasting notes for this quite a while ago. And I'm struggling to remember a lot of what I thought about it then. But now, I'm finding it challenging. Definitely, there are things in there that stand out. Pear, I said, yes. I do very much get that sort of flaky pastry and stewed apple thing. So it's doing something there for me. I still get that butterscotch thing. Finish is, as I said, quite long. But I'm trying to figure out, it's doing something. I can't quite get my hand on what it is. I remember this being fruitier. But then maybe the mood suited then to make it seem fruitier to me. You know, yes, it's fruity. There's no denying that. But just, I remember thinking it being fruitier. This definitely doesn't seem as fruity as I remember it. There's a strange funk in it, which I can't put my finger on. I'm reading here and it actually says that it's malty floral, and it is. It is malty. Floral, I'm not quite sure. I openly admit that I'm not quite sure what this is, what I'm putting my finger on. Definitely pear. Lemon and lime. And maybe a hint of mandarin orange. The fruit is there, but it's just, yet again, I said earlier on, treat this as a sum of its parts. It's a complex whiskey, but at the same time, it's a good whiskey to just sit around and not have to think about. palate doesn't change an awful lot with the addition of that water, which I find strange. Usually I find with fruitier whiskies that they tend to get even fruitier with the addition of water. This doesn't change an awful lot. I might sound like as if I'm being a bit down on this. Please don't think that. I do like this whiskey. There's not too many in the Loch Lomond series that I don't like. It's just here now, it's not performing the same way it did when I did my tasting notes. At other times, it's a prime example of one of those whiskies that is a bit sometimes good, sometimes not. But that's just my palate. I would definitely recommend it. I would say it's a better whiskey than I'm maybe making it sound right now. Comes in around the £40 to £50 mark here in the UK, which is a good price. It's 46-year-old, non-chill filtered, 12-year-old single malt Scotch. So yeah, all of what I said, but just I do, and I would recommend it. There. It might not sound like it, but I would. So there. So if I'm recommending it, what would I suggest as an alternative or something? You know, this was a bit of a tester for me, because for most of this bottle, I found this incredibly big, incredibly bold, and incredibly fruity. It's only today that I'm finding it a little less so. And I found it one that I struggled to think to myself, what do I have? What have I had that would compare? What would be in that same sort of area? I would point you in the direction of the Inchmurrin if you fancy the same sort of feel but peated malt. But I'm not going to do that, but I will stay with Loch Lomond and suggest to you this, the Glen Scotia 15, because this is another good fruity whiskey. And I think most of us would probably, who have had this, would agree that it's a good example of a nice, spicy, fruity whiskey. More expensive than the 12-year-old, but that's to be expected. But still, I think for what it is, an affordable whiskey, I can't find an awful lot to complain about coming out of the Loch Lomond group, which is, of course, Loch Lomond and Glen Scotia. So this is another one that just fits right in there. So yes, if you've went for this and you're progressing through your journey and you wanted something a little different, I'm going to recommend to you the Glen Scotia 15-year-old is what I am. This, I've said it already. I'm going to say it again before I go. Yeah, I do recommend it. I do. I just don't know why today it's still, and now it's starting to come to life a bit more. I did give it time to settle. But yeah, it's definitely come to life a bit more. It's becoming more malty. It is becoming more fruity. The palate's starting to sweeten up a little. I think the fact that it got that water in it and give it a chance to soften a little more, those fruits that I mentioned, particularly things like mandarin orange and pear, are coming to life. Yeah, they are. Yep. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much to my patrons. I said it before, without the patrons, this series doesn't happen. And what I like about this series is it opens my mind to certain whiskies, to choices that I may not have made. I may not have actually tried this at this part of my journey, were it not for my patrons asking me to review it, and those patrons' names being drawn out of a hat. So thank you very much once again to Che, Alan. Thank you to all the patrons who made choices in this series. I will be back with another Dealer's Choice series. I usually try to do a couple a year, but maybe one end of the year to another. And if you wish to join my patrons, the details are in the description, the video description below. So thank you very much. Once again, thank you for joining me. I'll be back next time with something a little different. Till then, here's your good health, my friends. Cheers. Hey, thanks for watching my video. Please click and subscribe to be notified of further content.